See at depth there are roots that are finding their way down, so that's great. This is an incredibly sandy soil, a very deep soil, a great site to contrast with the site that we were just at. So when you are looking for horizons here, you can see there is a color distinction, and it's just from an organic matter enrichment, and you can see the difference between the A horizon and the B horizon here, so it's quite easy to pick out and pretty consistent, and really this is the plow layer and the plowing depth that this is happening in. The challenge here is going to be to find that C horizon. This soil is so uniform that it is a bit difficult, but we are getting a slight color change down here. The difference between these two horizons, I would say, is quite diffuse. They kind of blend into each other here, so it's a little harder to delineate, but I would take probably a stab at it by looking at the other side of the soil profile here too, and I think it's happening somewhere around here. So again, if you compare it to the other site, the depth of this B horizon is much deeper than the last site we were at. When you get into the C horizon, it's just so friable, so it's just, you know, very easy for roots to penetrate. This is a field that's in rotation, so it's being farmed annually, but despite that, you can see at depth there are roots that are finding their way down, so that's great. If this site was in a perennial system, I suspect there'd be a lot more rooting material and you'd see a lot more roots coming at depth. It'd be a beautiful field to grow a crop that doesn't like to be wet. Again, some of these roots will find their way down through root holes, but this soil is so friable and so easy to kind of work down through that they're going to find a way down there regardless. What I'm seeing is you get where the soil's fallen out, you get these horizontal lines basically through the soil that give it a bit of a platy structure, and so this is often a sign that it's been compacted. I don't think it's at a point at all where it's going to be too much of an interference, but as I dig down in through here, I do get a little bit of an increased resistance. So, you know, at about a foot depth, it seems like, yeah, for sure, there's just a little bit of an increased resistance. It's not to the point where I think it's really going to interfere with root penetration. And if you want to test that in your field, you can actually sign out the soil penetrometers that are available through the Department of Agriculture. You can sign those out for free, and you can take them across your field, and it will tell you the depth of your layer compaction. When you have these sandy soils, you'll see we would call this a single grained structure. There's actually very little aggregation that occurs on these sandy soils. It's just because of the texture of them, it's a little bit more difficult for organic matter to accumulate in them, and then you don't get the same kind of level of aggregation around the roots, and you can see that in the topsoil. So when we talk structure, where the other site was really well granulated, and we'd say it has a granular structure, this site we would say it has a single grain, and you can actually, when you look at it, it falls apart into those single grains of sand. So very different type of soil. Going to be challenging in these soils if you're working them hard to maintain organic matter and also to try to really retain water, or to have a good kind of water holding capacity. They're going to drain really well. This soil is going to be really prone to drought. Again, if you watched the other video before this on the soil type that was out there, it was quite easy to form a ball in the palm of my hands with that other soil. And you see this one, it really has no cohesion. It's simply, I'm even unable to form a ball, let alone do a ribbon test. So again, that's due to the sandy nature of this soil. if you compared that last site, the color of that topsoil versus this topsoil, I'm betting that last site the color will actually be darker, and I think that is an indication that there is in fact probably more organic matter at that other site. In really wet conditions, organic matter will accumulate. The extreme version of this, I would say, is kind of like a peat bog, where things aren't breaking down and you're getting this accumulation of organic materials. This site had a cover crop. It's now planted in a rye. So you can see a little bit of growth. It's late in November here now. Talking to the farm managers, there's a real focus and a drive now in trying to increase the cover on this soil to try and build up this organic matter. So sometimes you'll see some kind of different lighter looking soil right underneath the AP horizon that's enriched with organic matter. This isn't glaying like we saw in the other site, but this is actually called an eluviated horizon. And what's going on here is that some of these organic acids that are in this upper layer are actually pulling down iron and aluminum, and sometimes clay will come down too, but they pull them down out of this layer and they deposit them below. And so you get this stark looking eluviated horizon here that is just underneath the topsoil here that's more enriched in organic matter. And you can also see right underneath it, it's very, very red because there's an enrichment of iron that's happening. The other site, very, very different than this site. So when you are managing these two fields, you really should take the soil conditions into consideration and how starkly different they can be. And we're really not even that far away from the other site. So that's at Nova Scotia. We just have so much variability. So to take a look at the soil with depth, in my opinion, is really, really valuable.